So a question that I get asked all the time is some kind of variation of, is it still worth moving to Germany? And, it's a big question. It's also a very personal question. It's really difficult to give a satisfactory answer just because so much of it depends on your personal circumstance, your skills, your qualifications, your background, your desires, your goals, what you actually are expecting. For me, it's a resounding yes. I feel very much at home here, but it's probably not the best option for everyone. And it's only really worth it if you know what you're getting into, because Germany has changed. The cost of living has risen, bureaucracy is still very painful, and public attitudes, especially towards immigration, have shifted. And so in this video, I really want to give you a straight answer. I want to tell you what's still great about Germany, what's getting harder, and who this move really actually makes sense for. Now, I moved here in 2011, and in many ways, Germany was a different country back then. The economy felt stable, jobs for life seemed to still be a thing, and no one was talking about immigration. On the other hand, it was much harder getting set up back then. Even doing something as simple as opening a bank account or getting a phone contract sorted out without speaking German was extremely difficult. The digital world was still in its infancy, and online processes in general were not commonplace in Germany. And I know a lot of people like to complain about this and talk about how backward Germany is when it comes to online processes and digital commerce. But believe me, things have developed here a lot in the last 10 years. And so what is it like today? Why do people still move to Germany? Well, really because Germany still has a lot to offer. The country's central location makes it a great place to be based in Europe. University is basically free, or at least very cheap. You've got public healthcare, safe cities, solid infrastructure, and more balanced pace of life compared to the UK or the US. There are very strong labor laws, which makes the job market extremely attractive for employees. And the same thing goes for renting. It's a topic for another time, but one of the reasons why over 50% of people rent in Germany is because of strong tenant protections. Landlords can't just evict you without cause. And even though things are not as secure or stable as they were 10 years ago, there are still many opportunities here. And I talked about this before at length, but the quality of life here is just much higher than it is back in the UK. Wages are higher in Germany than in the UK, and the cost of living is slightly lower. The air is clean, the cities are green, there's a cultural respect for boundaries and order that for many people feels refreshing. For some it might feel restrictive, but depending on where you come from, it can be really refreshing that there are rules and regulations around basic things like rubbish disposal, neighbor relations, or just communal responsibility. Work-life balance, while varying hugely between industries, is a thing, and you actually get time off to spend your money, to travel, to explore, and to do whatever you want. The minimum legal holiday allowance is 20 days, but most employers offer 30 days, with many offering much more than this, depending on your role and your priorities and the company that you work for. And so if you've got a stable income, you're moving with a family, the overall quality of life is extremely high. So Germany still has a lot going for it, but it's definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. And depending on your personal situation, there are probably better options for you. So before we get into some of the reasons why you should think twice before moving here, I really want to share something with you that could make your life a lot easier, especially if you're balancing work, life, and travel across Europe like I am. So N26, which is the bank that I use in Germany, are launching a SIM. And honestly, I think it's a really good, very practical add-on. It's an eSIM, so you don't need to wait around for a SIM card to arrive in the post or go queue up in the shop. You can just activate this service directly in the N26 app and you're good to go. You get unlimited calls and texts within Germany, plus free EU roaming, and it runs on Vodafone's 5G network too, so coverage has been really solid in my experience. You can start small at 10 gigabytes per month for under 14 euros or go for the medium or large subscription plan. What's really great about this is that it's totally flexible. There are no long-term contracts. You can cancel it month to month. And if you've dealt with German phone plans or quite honestly any subscription services in Germany, you know how rare this is. Usually you are locked in for 1, if not 2 years. And it's one of the things that I really hate about living here. I already use N26 for my banking, savings and travel stuff, and so having the option to sort my mobile plan out here too is just a real win. Life in Germany can be complicated enough. Your phone plan doesn't have to be. And so if you want to make your life easier, then check the link in the description below to download the app and activate your eSIM. Use my code when signing up to get €20 starting bonus. Now, one thing that you should consider is the rising cost of living. Now, I mentioned that the cost of living is lower than in the UK, but that doesn't mean it's cheap. Renting might be more secure than in other countries, but rents have risen significantly in recent years. And so much so that especially young people are having to live in biggies or have roommates because they just can't afford a place by themselves. And especially in cities like Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, Frankfurt, finding a place to live here has become a nightmare. Short supply, rising rents, and stiff competition. This already means that another reason that the overwhelming majority of people rent in large cities is just because the prices have made owning property really out of reach for the vast majority of people. The stories of how people got their apartments are all very similar, basically with a bit of luck. They were in the right place at the right time. And I only got my apartment because the first two people dropped out at the last minute and I was the next person on the list. And so finding an apartment is kind of like finding a job. You need to spend some time thinking about what makes you stand out and why you would be a good fit for this place. Having a good salary is not enough. You need to make a good impression with the landlord. And also landlords are generally looking for reliable long-term renters. They don't want someone who's going to move out in in a year's time. Now, there are apartments catered specifically to this type of person, so if you are looking for something temporary, that is possible, but it's going to cost you more. And so be prepared for a very challenging house hunt. Secondly, the cost of living in general has just risen a lot. Now, I know this is not specific to Germany, but it's something that you need to take into consideration. Energy prices are, I think, the most expensive in Europe, if not the most, at least one of the most expensive in Europe. Groceries have increased a lot in the last 2 years, and it's not unaffordable, but it's definitely not the cheap European alternative that it used to be. I was back in the UK recently, and the prices of groceries in the supermarket and the restaurant are very similar. Obviously there are regional differences. Some things are more expensive here, some things are cheaper. But when I moved here in 2011, prices across the board were significantly lower in Germany than they were in the UK. And I'm talking like 30 to 50% lower. Everything from housing to groceries, restaurants, hotels, travel, it was all significantly cheaper in the UK. And that is now just a thing of the past. Thirdly, and this is very important, do not move here without a job lined up. It is an employer's market right now, so getting a job is not easy. There is a bit of a mismatch in the market right now with employers complaining that they can't find qualified staff. Now, Germany's job market is still quite rigid, and so just because you have qualifications or experiences made in another country, that doesn't mean that it will translate in Germany. There are still shortages in some sectors like healthcare, engineering, and trades, but for many roles, especially non-German speakers, it's tough. And so many immigrants who try to come here without a job already set up, they just kind of slide into short-term agency work or what's known as Zeitarbeit, which I would not recommend. Yes, there are certain advantages. It's flexible. You're not tied to one employer, but it also means you have less benefits and you are not really treated as an equal employee. You also have no security, as many of these contracts only go for a few months, not years. And also, Germany is not the best place for freelancers, creatives, or digital nomads. The country has very strong social support systems, but you will not get any of this if you are a freelancer. You will have to pay the complete sum of your own healthcare. You will not have access to unemployment benefit or any of the other benefits. You don't enjoy paid holiday or paid sick leave. And so you're paying the taxes, but you're not really getting the benefits that employees get. And so that is really another thing to bear in mind. Something else that you should know is that major German cities are industry specific. I see this as a major advantage. The UK revolves around London, France revolves around Paris, but Germany has Berlin for politics and governance. They have Hamburg for trade, Cologne for media, Frankfurt for finance, Stuttgart for cars and engineering, and Munich for cars and industry. And so this is another thing to bear in mind when thinking about where you want to move to. Now, remote jobs do also exist, but large employers in Germany are not embracing this trend at all. On the contrary, many large employers have already mandated mandatory office days for their staff, and this looks like it's only going to increase in the future. Bureaucracy is still a beast. Anmeldung, appointments, visa paperwork, old school processes, they will test your patience. But beyond the paperwork, there's a deeper layer. How welcome you will feel, this all depends on where you move to. And I've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to go into it here, but many immigrants find the Germans rude. They find them cold and unwelcoming. And so it's just a cultural difference, and it will take some getting used to. Most people can't handle the German directness, and they often feel personally attacked or offended on a daily basis. And this is something you're going to have to get used to if you move here. Also, the cries against immigration are growing in volume across Germany. So in big cities, international communities are more established, and so it's easier to integrate. But in smaller towns or more conservative regions, the tone is not particularly welcoming. And so anti-immigrant rhetoric has become louder, especially in political discourse and on social media. And so you may not experience hostility directly, but the atmosphere does matter. And so pay close attention to where you're moving. Some areas are far more open and diverse than others. And so this isn't about fear, it's just about being informed and making the right decision about where to set yourself up for success. So Germany is still a great place to move to if you fit certain profiles. So if you have a job offer or you work in a high demand field, if you're coming with a family and you value safety, order, and education, if you are prepared to learn the language and to integrate, and if you are patient and realistic, you will probably get on fine here. But if you're hoping to figure it out once you land, or you're trying to escape problems back home without a plan, don't come. It's not going to work out well. So would I move here? Absolutely, but I come with different expectations. I'd understand that it's not easy anymore. I'd be prepared for loneliness, for delays, for cultural friction, and I'd come with a job in hand, a plan for learning the language, and a mindset focused on long-term integration. Because when it works, life can be a dream, but it's not automatic. You have to earn it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this video was of help. Let me know in the comments below what your experience has been and what your take is. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.